Hello, I'm Theolyn Cortens. Welcome to SoulSchool and welcome to this Archangel video, which is one in a series of 8 that I'm putting together under my overarching series, Signs and Wonders. So this is the 7th in the series where I'm covering the archangels who are guardians of the gates of light for the lower part of the tree of life, the Kabalistic mystical diagram, which shows us how divine energy works in an archetypal way. So we started with Sandalphon at the foot of the tree of life in what is called the kingdom. We could call it the homeland. And then we moved to Oriel, who is the bride of Sandalphon. They are a married couple. Then we moved up the central pillar of the tree of life to Gabriel. Then we moved across to the feminine side of the tree of life, the passive or yin side, where we met Raphael. Then we moved right across, back over to the active masculine yang side, and we met Haniel. We came back to the centre and we met Michael, who holds the reins, so to speak, the commander-in-chief. So now we've moved back to the yin, passive, feminine side of the tree of life, and we're meeting Samael. And Samael resides in a sephira called severity, and is possibly the most difficult of these archetypes for us to deal with. But that's who we're going to be talking about today. So, how to start with Samael. Samael's name actually means poison of God, not a good starting place, actually. So in my book, Working with Archangels, I quote from I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes. And the quotation is very short. Contented limitation, success. So it's very useful to review what I Ching says about limitation, restriction, boundaries. If you are going to look at I Ching, if you're not experienced with it, don't just go for, the dummy's guide to I Ching. Go back to the best, the greatest and the best. And this is my old battered copy of the Richard Wilhelm translation with the foreword by Carl Jung. And I've had this now for nearly 50 years. I've lost track actually. What year did I get it? Probably 72. Okay, so that's my excuse for it being a little bit ragged at the edges. So hexagram 60 is limitation. And this is what it says. A lake occupies a limited space. When more water comes into it, it overflows. Therefore, limits must be set for the water. And the image shows water below and water above, with the firmament between them as a limit. So if you look at the hexagrams, that's the pattern that you can see. Now, the Chinese word for limitation really denotes the joints that divide a bamboo stalk. In relation to ordinary life, it means the thrift that sets fixed limits upon expenditures. In relation to the moral sphere, it means the fixed limits that the superior man sets upon his actions, the limits of loyalty and disinterestedness. Disinterestedness. So loyalty and disinterestedness. In other words, moral integrity comes when you are loyal to something that is correct, but you are disinterested because you don't have any agenda, personal agenda. Limitations are troublesome, but they are effective. If we live economically in normal times, we are prepared for times of want. And to be sparing saves us from humiliation. Limitations are also indispensable in the regulation of world conditions. In nature, there are fixed limits for summer and winter, day and night, and these limits give the year its meaning. In the same way, economy, by setting fixed limits upon expenditures, acts to preserve property and prevent injury to people. But in limitation, we must observe due measure. If a person, should seek to impose galling limitations upon his own nature, it would be injurious. So that's what I Ching has to say about limitations and boundaries. And in astrology, Saturn is the lord of the boundaries, the lord of limitation. And that's why I associate Samael with Saturn. Samael also traditionally is associated with Satan. So here we are treading on a very difficult topic, because in Christianity, Satan has a kind of dualistic role of being the opposition to the good God. Satan is the evil one. He opposes God. This is a dualistic model. In earlier Jewish tradition, the Hasatan just meant the adversary. And the Hasatan was under the jurisdiction of God. And there was no way that Satan could do his own thing. He wasn't an independent force. He wasn't even a fallen angel. That doesn't happen until much later in the mythology. And when we meet Hasatan in the story of Job, it's very clear that he can't act in Job's life to do all kinds of unpleasant things to Job, deprive him of his family and his wealth and even his health. All those things that happen, nasty things that happen to Job, are imposed upon him by the adversary. But that adversary has to originally have had permission from God. So the limitation or the severity of the divine is not an independent, nasty, out to get you force. It is an aspect of divinity which is necessary for growth, because you can't just keep expanding, like in I Ching, the lake has to have the boundaries, otherwise the water spills over. And in some ways, every one of these containers of light energy is creating a new boundary for the divine to explore its potentials, the different potentials that can be expressed in the world. And then if those should overflow, because there was more emphasis on yang quality, then there would be it would be out of order, out of balance with perhaps the yin energy on the other side. And this is what's tended to happen in Western culture. We've been so preoccupied with the yang, getting what we want done, managing the world, achieving things, goal-oriented, that we have not attended to what you could call the softer, squishier bit of our psycho-spiritual nature, the divinity within us, which says, yes, it's all very well to go and, climb the mountain, climb Mount Everest or whatever it is, but, attend to your own personal comfort and the comfort of other people and the caring as well. Don't do one to sacrifice the other. I've often thought in that respect of the story of Hannibal, who reputedly said, because he wanted to cross the Alps, if there is a way, I will find it. And if there isn't a way, I will make it. And Hannibal famously crossed the Alps. He made a way. And he took elephants with him, as well as a load of people. And many, 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 many elephants and many, many, many people died in the process. So Hannibal was gung-ho in that archetypal, adventuring, exploring, expanding energy, and was taking no heed for the care and necessary compassion that he should have been expressing towards the people and the elephants who were supporting his process. So the limitation that finally comes for everyone, the final boundary, so to speak, during a particular incarnation, will be the death of the physical body. But death is not something to fear, and it may be a hurdle, but it doesn't mean the death of being. Death is not something to fear. Death is a process. And we see it like a boundary. We see it like an ending. And Samael is certainly associated with death. And Samael's always been regarded in the legends as a really terrifying character. And there's an old story about Moses, who is being taken to the seventh heaven on a journey with Metatron. And he meets Samael, and he's absolutely terrified by this being who is covered from head to foot in these really glaring eyes. And so he asks, who's this? Who's this? And he is told this is Samael, and he's just on his way down to earth to attend to the deathbed of Job. And Moses says, I just hope he doesn't come when I have to die, because he's so terrified by this vision. And of course, death is always depicted in literature and in visual arts as a terrifying being in one way or another, sometimes cloaked and hooded, sometimes with a scythe to represent the cutting down of life. So Samael is about limitation. But let's remind ourselves that very famous quotation from Nietzsche, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And actually, because we know that when we die, that thing that makes you dead might still be making you stronger even after death. So the Samael process is about discipline. Difficult word beginning with D, difficult, discipline. Challenging word. Let's get our act together. Let's organise ourselves. Let's say no to certain things. Cosmic no. That's what Samael is. You can't have that. If you want this, you can't have that. Because quite often the thing that you want over here is actually the opposite of what you really, really want. So it's discovering what you do want and what's appropriate and what is suitable for the integration of your psycho-spiritual being. That is how Samael can help you. So you're on a journey and you come to a door and you're rapping on the door and there's not opening for you. Something on that doorway is saying no. Something on that doorway, or what the door is made of, is a block that will prevent you moving forward until you deal with it. And it may be, as in I Ching, that you have to step into a situation of contented limitation, where you accept that you can't go any further, or at least for the time being. And then success can come to you in a new way because you've taken on the fact that as a human being there are limits. And so you can't just go on expanding and expanding, or spending and spending, or whatever it is that would be great fun. And again, this is a lesson for the whole of our Western culture to learn. Economics in the West is always based on expansion, continually making more money, making more profit. And the law of nature, not to mention the law of God, is that doesn't work forever, because this pendulum has got to swing back the other direction. We've got to allow for the limitation. We have the feast and we have the famine. And we don't have to suffer during the famine, as it says in I Ching, as long as you prepare for the fact that at some point there will be less than you'd hoped for. If you're prepared for that, then you won't feel the discomfort in such an extreme way. And I think many people have been learning that during the years 2020 and 2021, during the global pandemic. You can't just keep doing and going and out and out and out, further and further, without some kind of kickback, which brings you up sharp as a global economy. So that's what Samael is about. But there's also something here, visually, the way I experienced Samael when I first requested the meeting, was that she, and I use the word she advisedly, is like an ice queen, like crystals, like the snow queen. And I remembered that line in the Narnia story, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, in which one of the characters says, she's made it always winter and never Christmas. But Samael, as always winter, will not actually prevail because, again, as I Ching says, you have the winter, but you also have the spring and the summer. That's a natural flow of energy. So Samael, as severity, as Saturn, cannot hold on to that tight restriction forever, because the natural thing is for that to open up again and get cosmic yes, who we'll be talking about in the next video. Father Christmas will come, even in the pandemic. So the restrictions that we are generally having to take on board are all being done for the sake of being able to move out of those restrictions in future. But if we move out of those restrictions and forget what the necessity was for having them, then we may just go out there again and come face to face with the same issue coming back to us. So Samael, as the Ice Queen, she doesn't have the entitlement to make it always winter, but her winters will be more extreme. They will be ice ages if we don't attend to the fact that we have to honour and respect the necessity for limitation, to take on the boundaries, to take on the restrictions, to willingly and contentedly allow limitation a role in our life. That's why people have religious rituals and religious restrictions like fasting at certain times of year and so on, because that is a limitation on what you personally might like to be doing. Even if you restrict yourself to, I'm not allowed to drink alcohol because I follow this religion. It's not the alcohol that's the issue. It is actually abiding by a series of restrictions and limitations that you take on willingly. So Samael is all about knowing what your boundaries are and knowing why there must be boundaries in your life in certain areas. There will always be the necessity for limitation, for cosmic no. Once you take that on board, Samael is not a problem anymore. She's a friend and an assistant in getting what your soul desires in this world. So welcome, Samael. Find out more about her in my book, Working with Archangels. Find the channeling in the angel script and join Accessing Angelic Realms, a class that you can do at home on your own, or you can ask me for personal supervision, and I'd be delighted to meet you on Zoom. Many blessings, and keep shining.